Okay. And grab a bright color and just lay in, not looking at the reference. We're just taking our understanding of rendering forms. And we know that the polygons facing the light are going to receive light and the polygons facing away will not. Or as they face away, they'll just be less and gradually less lit. Okay, just going to put a little bit of a highlight there as an emphasis of that little donut thing. Top of the lip over here will receive light. Light over here on the sphere. And then we could just sort of blend it all together. I'm going to do a quick soft pass with the airbrush of light on top of everything. Merge it down, and we could blend it using that mixer brush. And by the way, so as I'm doing this as a sort of painterly trick or suggestion, I like to go along the geometry, along the wireframe, so that the brush strokes are also indicating the roundedness of the forms. Okay, gonna just blend along using this mixer brush. Going along with the forms, making sure the highlights stay where they need to be. It's okay if it gets messy, as long as when we zoom out, it still reads as the lips, and we're good to go. Let's grab the bristle brush. Rough round bristle 13. Anyway, just a quick study of a mouth, and clearly it reads as a mouth, and might be slightly out of perspective and all that, but you can certainly correct that later on. And then bring back some of those shadows. Especially the contact shadow between the two lips. All right, cool. Well, that is the part where we're understanding the form. Now let's try to actually do the same thing, but on the sketch that we have of the character. Figure, person, model, guy, man. Maybe we should have done that first so we can layer the nose on top. But luckily the nose we can just turn off. Yes, cool, very nice. Let's bring this over. Let's go black and white. Okay, so based on that, I'm going to be a bit more in the painterly mindset. I'm not going to be doing the wireframe stuff this time. I'm just going to look over and just, as I borrow these highlights and shadows, I'm going to keep in mind the forms, but not necessarily draw them out. Definitely a skill you can develop in terms of figuring out form just by looking at the light. So we have light hitting here, light hitting up there, a little bit there, but it's not too bright. We might have to darken it later. And up here, there's also some brightness. We're going to fade that in just very subtly by holding Alt, clicking the value, just painting. That's how I like to blend sometimes. Okay, and there's light there. We already have some values here set up for us. We could just use that to our advantage. And let's blend in that spherical geometry there. Okay, now let's bring those darks back. So for this, I like to find landmarks that I can put in. So visual landmarks being corners of the mouth. And notice that, you might be tempted to put the corner of the mouth equally over here because, visually against the center line, it might make sense, but it's in perspective at a 3/4 view. So if you really look at the reference, this corner of the mouth is behind where the nose ends. So be careful about that. On a checklist, just make sure that's added there, like, hey, where is the corner of the mouth actually? All right, I'm going to draw the contact line between the lips and make that a little bit darker. And there's some shadow up here because the form turns away from us. Okay. And over here, let's just put that shadow in. There's some light here, which is way too bright with what I just put. That's fine, we could change that. But first I want the shadows to be believable here. So I'm just going to grab the airbrush and do a bit of a smoother approach, especially for core shadows. For core shadows and cylinders and spheres, the airbrush is really useful for it if you don't feel like blending things every time. Also to lightly put in the proper value of things like the lips there. Okay, just ping-ponging my eyes back and forth, noticing subtleties and values, gradating here. Just gonna sneak that in there. Okay, I want to emphasize that shadow right there a little bit more and exaggerate it so it's more obvious. And just so that this chin pops out, what I want to do is make the background behind it a little bit darker. Let's go even darker than that. Okay. Even on the neck area, it's slightly darker too. And we'll blur it a little bit with the airbrush because it doesn't need to be that sharp and in focus. Let's go ahead and turn the nose back on and see how it looks together. Yeah, cool, it works. Let's go ahead and erase some of this from the nose layer. And it's starting to come together piece by piece. You might be wondering, is this the approach that you should do to do a study portrait black and white from reference? Not really. This specific method is to go carefully piece by piece to understand the form of things. Later on, there will be an assignment and, well, demo and assignment of my method of doing portrait studies of people in black and white to understand the light, the value groups, but this is right now to focus only on form. Okay, let's just correct some of the silhouettes here. Okay, so I've made the nose too far to the left. Well, that's okay, we could just move it over. Oops. Like that. Yeah, that feels a bit more right. And it's perfectly okay to do this stuff. You know, one might argue that, well, hey, if you're going to use transform and undo and eraser and all that stuff, that you're missing out on learning properly. Fair enough, but if you're correcting things this way, just keep in mind, like, oh, I made that mistake. Next time I'll try to avoid doing that so I won't have to. So it's not entirely a bad thing. Also, who cares? As long as you keep studying and trying over and over again, you'll get good, even though everything isn't a super perfect and ideal way to do it. Okay, let's make this part darker and just shade this all in.